Hello, everyone. Good morning to our friends who are joining us in the Pacific Northwest or on PSD, and everyone in Sierra Leone, where it's now 5:30. And if you're on the East Coast or anywhere else in the world, good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining our quarterly webinar. This Women's Month, we're gathered here to celebrate the incredible impacts Sierra Leonean women have on education. But as we celebrate, we must also confront a sobering reality. Education cannot change a life if it stops halfway. Today, we're turning our focus toward a critical challenge in Sierra Leone, and that is the significant gender gap in secondary school completion. While thousands of girls across the country start their educational journey with hope and ambition, far too many are forced to leave it behind. The data from UNESCO tells a clear story. Only 12.5% of girls complete secondary school education compared to over 20% of boys. At the primary level, the number of girls and boys completing secondary school is almost equal, which is almost 100%. By the time boys and girls get to JSS, graduation rates go down to about 45 and 50%. And then by the time it gets to senior secondary school, we have what you see, which is that across the board, boys and girls are not completing their full education because they drop out due to various different issues, both structural, cultural, social, and of course, also financial. What we've seen is that girls are less likely to complete senior secondary school, meaning that later on in the job market and just in the their economic activity, it affects their entire life. Today, our mission here at Schools for Salone, which has had a dedicated over 2 decades to supporting and strengthening the education ecosystem in Sierra Leone, is to use this opportunity to prefer solutions by listening to Sierra Leonean women educators who are shaping policy and helping to change the landscape. We believe that staying in school shouldn't be a struggle against biology or social barriers. We're working on the ground with our partners to provide menstrual hygiene support for girls. That means distributing free reusable pads to ensure that no girl misses class. We do reproductive health education, hosting workshops on reproductive and sexual health, not just for girls, also for boys, their moms, their dads, and in communities in Sierra Leone. We're building the support networks needed to address the root causes of school dropouts. We are really, really excited and honored for all of you to be here today with some of our most influential leaders in the educational sector. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the barriers preventing girls from finishing school, and more importantly, chart new pathways towards progress. Thank you for being a part of this vital conversation. Your presence here is the first step in ensuring that every girl in Sierra Leone has the chance to walk across the graduation stage. Please feel free as you're joining us during this call to ask questions. We will highlight those questions and either the people who are talking today will answer. We also have some people from our team at Schools for Salone in the backstage who might be able to answer some of your questions. So thank you so much for being here. Also, as you tune in, I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. So feel free to drop your city, your state, your country, or your connection to Sierra Leone. We always love to hear who you are, where you're from, and how you found out about Schools for Salone or the work that we do. So thank you for being here. Before we start the conversation, I would like to play you a short film from one of our latest community, one of the communities where we work, where we recently opened a senior secondary school.
Kusaro Jalo from Tongolili districts, Sama Chiefdom. But I grew up na Kumala when I'm in motherland, when I do districts, Neni Chiefdom. I'm from an extended family where papa get 3 wives and 18 pikin. But out of the 18 pikin, I mean, no man are the only one way it don't reach to this level where they so in terms of education due to the grace of God and the support of Schools for Salone.
They feel fine because now they time when they come out of school,
Before
Go
down, I be students na the EBK campus. I be doing my HTC primary. So I be in a campus. We get small issue, financial issue to be precise. Then I been there in that kind of mood where Mr. Clinton Coker recognized me. So he sent one of in teachers the way he come for can pay fees for me then call me. He asked me about me background. Me I tell him small. Then he decide for assist me. It's in your little way get. They be say they put me case across. So he put me case across, so he do nothing. Then School for Salone decide for support me for doing my degree, and then they also support me picking because before now been very hard for me I will sustain. Even forget a feeding a day. 1 meal per day, not be easy. Pass I get for Brookstone, build water for people there, and do some mineral jobs so I will get for sustain. So I there as an intern, Emani, for monitor the bicycle project to be specific, and also the community people for the involvement of the community and the school, and the teachers also. Because some teachers then the way they know they're on payroll. So I monitor them. Because School for Salone they give them small stipend. So I monitor their attendance. But now where I don't come, I make sure so the community self pay attention to the school for monitor things the way they go out in our school. The challenge is not the data, for collect the data. Because at times it can be so much scanty and it can be straightforward. But I decide for carry with my own book and I give them templates where then they use na something for overcome. While me work the impact the community, especially the school, because before now we will not be the monitor then attendance, and not the monitor then grade system, that's the exams, performance. Then performance may very poor in external exams. But for now, we can both say if we send 10 picking, we get 10 in external exam. Most especially the MPSC. We result them fine this year since I come, and the was also. And now the community people themselves don't see them for sending picking them at school and therefore make sure say then they come every day and check on them. And with the hope for better in the next 2, 3, 5 years with the monitoring system where School for Salone they don't carry it. I should say we go do more.
Kare. Present. Fatima Samura. Present.
I feel like say me work don't really create impact na people their life, and I don't make a difference because one time the way I don't see possible way instead of the struggle when I a student, I not get way for helper, but I find way for putting case across. Then now they do well in School for Salone they support her. School for Salone na art organization, na a Kumbra organization. Now that's how the people then know. Because then they build schools. They not only build school, then they supply school materials, and then they give bikes, and they support the teachers, and then get a lot way then they do. Then they even give sanitary pads to picking them. Then they know they tap the then they give boy picking them boxer and other after them for make them not go feel left out. So School for Salone they do a great job now when I do with the streets.
Thank you. So for those of us who are joining us for the first time, I feel like I need to give you a little bit of a background on who we are, because you're like, wait, who's this girl and where's this school? So over the last 2 decades, Schools for Salone has built about 47 schools across Sierra Leone. Some of those are school buildings in communities that already had one small school or one part of a school. They had a primary school and then they needed a JSS. So we come in and we build a JSS. Where Mary's working. So Mary didn't attend the Schools for Salone school, but Clinton Coca, who she references our story, is one of our partners who leads an organization called Last Mile Learning in the Koinadugu area. And Clinton is also one of our key partners who helps in the construction of schools. And so he's always basically keeping an eye out for people in the communities that we work who are really bright and enterprising, and maybe they just need a little support by way of education. And so he basically met Mary and brought her in. And not only did Schools for Salone provide the scholarship for her to continue with her education, but she's now also an intern with his own organization, helping us do M&E of our schools, like to collect data around attendance. But also we have a partnership with the Village Bike Project, where we distribute bikes to last mile communities to reduce the distance that children have to travel to get to school, especially in a place like Koinadugu. Children, especially when they get to like the secondary school, there are not a lot of secondary schools that are located next to JSSs. Some children have to leave their community, go all the way into Kabbalah town, and actually move away from family so that they would be closer to an SS so they don't drop out. So we provide bicycles to make sure that children can stay within their communities. And that's also the reason why we built schools, because we realized that one of the biggest challenges with senior secondary school continuation for both boys and girls is that if you just don't have a school in your community to go from JSS to senior secondary school, you won't go. Or if you must go, or if you have to go, it's at really high cost to your family. So we're really excited to have Mary as part of our team, and her story really just captures why we do what we do, and why we think it's so important that women get the opportunity to complete their education. So enough for me. We'll bring the experts on. Also, two of our experts are joining us from Sierra Leone. Now, what that means, we have two of our experts joining us from Sierra Leone. And what that means by way of internet is the will is strong, but sometimes the technology is weak. So should you notice that, the internet does not hold, please just note that these are the challenges that we have. We also have one person joining us here from the US. So let's welcome Dr. Bidemi Carol. I have to remove this particular, sorry. Yes, sometimes my my driving on these platforms gets a little messy. I'd like to introduce you. Well, no, Bidemi, let me bring your graphic. There you go. Perfect. So I would like to introduce you to Dr. Bidemi Carol, who is also part of the Schools for Salone board. Dr. Carol, who is a graduate of the Annie Walsh Memorial School. Okay, I know it's Awoga season, so I just had to put that out there. So Dr. Carol is an expert in international education who has contributed to projects in Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, Uganda, Liberia, and Malawi, and also here in the US. She has over 2 decades of experience in education policy and programming in sub-Saharan Africa. She also has experience in research and analysis of education policies and programs, monitoring and evaluation, management of complex education programs, and a range of educational issues, including education in post-conflict and fragile states, higher education, girls' education, policy dialogue, education management information systems. She's also the founding member of the Learning Foundation, which is a partner organization to Schools for Salone, the RISE Network, and the Institute for Policy and Analysis and Research. She holds a PhD and a master's degree from Stanford University in International Education and Economics, respectively. Thank you, Bidemi, for being here today. Next up, I'm going to welcome Professor Miriam Conte Morgan, who I'm also proud to call Auntie. Professor Conte Morgan is a scholar, educator, and leader shaping the future of education in Sierra Leone. She's the first ever female deputy vice chancellor of the Institute of Public Administration and Management. She brought a wealth of experience. She has a wealth of experience in academia, research, and institutional development. Her journey began with a BA from Probe College in 1981, followed by years of teaching English and history at St. Joseph's Secondary School and at the Albert Academy. She pursued studies at Leeds University in the UK, earning a master's in linguistics and English language teaching in 1987. In 1992, she moved to the United States, where she taught African literature and writing courses at Harvard University and Ohio State. Professor Conte Morgan sought new challenges and transitioned into academic librarianship, earning a master's in library and information science in 1999. She became a reference librarian at Ohio State and rose to the position of associate professor in 2005 and contributed significantly to research in the field. In 2003, she took the leap and returned to Sierra Leone, leading IPAM's library and spearheading its modernization efforts, ensuring faculty and students had access to digital resources, research materials, and global academic networks. Beyond the library, she has played key roles in the institutional development, serving as coordinator of the University Development Committee and the University Endowment Fund. With a career spanning teaching, research, librarianship, and university administration, Professor Conte Morgan is not just a leader, but a mentor, innovator, and advocate for academic excellence. And last year, she retired from her role as a Deputy Vice Chancellor for IPAM. Thank you so much for joining us, Auntie Nyonyo. It's so weird to call you Professor. I'm so sorry. Last but definitely not least is my friend and clients, Dr. Yakima Manti Jones. Well, yes, clients, definitely clients. Even though she's always like, "Hey, Vicky, this money I so beaucoup," but she's a forever client. Dr. Yakima Manti Jones Neymara is an economist, lecturer, and researcher, and an entrepreneur, as well as a philanthropist. Among many other things in her portfolio, she currently serves as a section editor for the Journal of Public Health in Africa and project leader for Delivery Associates. Dr. Jones is an expert in development economics, finance, econometrics, and project management. She holds a BS in economics from the Probe College, University of Sierra Leone, a postgraduate diploma in finance and economics from the University of Manchester, and an MSc in finance and economics from Queen Mary and Westfield College at the University of London, an MRes in international business and economic development from Birkbeck College, University of London, and a PhD in finance and economics from Birkbeck College at the University of London. She also holds a certificate in social entrepreneurship from the University of Oxford and an executive certificate in economic development from Harvard Kennedy School. Girl! Okay. Dr. Jones is an Amwaje leader at the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center for Women and Development. She's the founder of Yak Jones Foundation that aims at promoting education in Sierra Leone by encouraging the reading culture amongst young people. The foundation has launched a textbook drive with the long term goal of establishing libraries and learning institutions and holding events, quizzes, reading competitions in partnership with other literacy groups. Wow, exactly. We said we would have a powerhouse, and that's what we have here today. I feel like I need like a whole meal right now from all of this, like, the accolades. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I know that we had some time issues, so I really just want to get right into the conversation. Um, Birami, you've worked across several countries in sub Saharan Africa. Are there any specific policy interventions or best practices from other regions that Sierra Leone should adopt to close the gender gap between boys and girls in school completion rates?
Thanks, Vicky. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
And I just want to say before I get started that it's really great to be on this panel with Yakima and Prof. Conte Morgan. It's always also great to talk about education in Sierra Leone. But to come back to your question about what other countries are doing, I guess first, and you have said this in the beginning in many ways, that when you think about girls' completion, there are lots of different factors that contribute to why girls don't complete secondary school specifically. And the relative sort of strengths of those reasons differ from country to country. I think in terms of Sierra Leone, some of the main reasons have to do with the cost of schooling. So even though the government school fees are supposed to be free, there are lots of other direct costs of schooling, uniform, transport, um, lesson fees, especially in school. Um, and when we talk about costs, it's not just sort of those direct costs of schooling, but also kind of the opportunity costs. So what um, what would girls be doing if they weren't in school? Many girls in Sierra Leone sort of help with bringing income to the family, with domestic help, etc. So because of that, when it comes to also thinking about what can be done, again, it had that the solution is not just one thing. There's no sort of single magic bullet or single intervention, even when we look across Africa. Making progress, combine sort of interventions in policy, financial support, in making sure schools are safe, and also in having programs to ensure that girls do not fall sort of to early marriage or teenage pregnancy. So you kind of have to take sort of a multifaceted approach to this. Some countries or some programs that have shown some impact in other countries. In Malawi, for example, there is a conditional cash program where girls and their families are given money if the girls sort of stay in school. And they've done sort of really rigorous studies to show that programs like that um, can work. CamFed, which is another African NGO that works across countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, also have programs that have been shown to work in terms of keeping girls in secondary school and beyond. Again, addressing all of these different factors, whether it's paying school fees, providing uniforms, but I think also really importantly, providing a network, a mentoring through a network of other female graduates and supporting sort of transition points, which is where girls tend to fall through the cracks. So supporting transition between primary and secondary, junior secondary, and also between junior secondary and senior secondary. In Sierra Leone, we have the radical inclusion policy, which part of what it's supposed to do is really focus on sort of groups, marginalized groups that tend to fall through the cracks and tend to leave school without completing. And they're specifically looking at girls who um, either come from poor backgrounds, come from rural areas where the sort of secondary school completion rates are lowest. So I think we have generally good policies. The where things sort of fall apart is in the implementation of those policies and putting resources, whether it's people or finances, behind those policies. So yeah, I mean, basically, if we want to improve girls' completion in Sierra Leone, we really have to address all of these things together. Make sure we understand how gender intersects with poverty, intersects with um, the location, disability, and all of those kinds of things, to help design programs that can actually work to keep girls in through senior secondary. I think the other thing I will say, so we're talking a lot about access and sort of keeping girls in school, but ultimately, the ultimate goal of education is learning and making sure girls, even from sort of at the very beginning at the primary school, are doing well in school, and having a quality education also helps to keep them in school. Because if parents see that girls are not really learning, then they start to kind of question the importance of sort of investing in them. So I think even as we're talking about going to school and staying in school, also thinking about the quality of the education that they get when they're in school is also critically important.
Right. No, thank you so much. Yakima, Bidemi just raised the fact the issue of quality. I know that through your foundation, you do a lot of work in the reading and like literacy space. Um, how do you, first of all, what do you find I know that you guys work in the primary school level. Do you find that, like in terms of reading skills, at least, do you find any gender imbalances starting at the primary level? If you could talk a little bit about that. And also, how does the work you do with reading and literacy support, quality education as a whole in the schools that you work?
Mhm. Thank you, Vicky. And I was really inspired by the video that you showed. So thank you to Schools for Salon for all the great work you did for learners in Sierra Leone, and to everyone here, Prof and BW, for taking part in this really important conversation. So as you said, in the work we do at React Jones Foundation, we focus on literacy reading, because for us, we say we read to change lives, because reading is the foundation for all learning. And in our work, even from early days, there's a vast difference between the capacity of boys compared to girls, because traditionally and over the years, they send the boys to school earlier than the girls. So most of the girls do not benefit from early learning opportunities. They do not go to like nursery school, so they just start school class one. So they've missed all those foundational years where they could have learned their phonics and stuff that could help them in reading. So that gap is there, and that continues to grow over the course of their learning cycle. And but what we do, and what I want to say, is that if we continuously see that learners are not reading at their levels. So different studies have shown that. That's why government has all these different interventions about the Education Innovation Challenge and all the work that the Education Outcomes Fund is funding, because not kids not reading is not just a literacy issue, it's a resilience and agency issue, because if they know how to read, it would help them across their learning in all these different subjects. So I think that the work we do and everyone that's working to help improve literacy outcomes in Sierra Leone is helping to build three different forms of critical and forms of resilience in our learners. And the first one is cognitive, because a child that develops stronger comprehension, stronger problem solving abilities really builds their confidence in learning. So it goes beyond reading, it makes it easier for them to cope with academic pressure. And that down the line helps them to stay longer in school and not drop out. And we know as you go through the years, school becomes more demanding. The second form of resilience that I see reading help develop is the psychological one. Because when you read, you say reading helps you travel without leaving your room. So girls get to experience different stories, different ideas. They get to see different role models that are beyond their immediate environment. So this widening of their imagination of what is possible helps them to see um, themselves in different scenarios, help them to imagine themselves in different futures, help them to see that there are multiple opportunities out there. And so when they're in school and they see that the different options open to me, they feel less limited and more committed or more inspired to continue learning, even when school pressure gets a lot tougher or pressures them to drop out. But like it helps build that resilience to say, no, I'm not limited anymore. There's so many opportunities out there for me if I continue to learn and read. And then the third one is voice and agency. Because we always talk about education and but education is a means, it's a tool, it's not an end in itself. And we want the goal is to invest in the education of our learners so that they become more productive, and productivity is linked to their agency, because when you can speak up for yourself you can contribute better. So reading helps strengthen that their language, expression and confidence. And girls who are able to read well are able to better articulate their aspirations, they're able to better engage with teachers, and also to negotiate their position in their families and communities. Because when they're educated, when BDB mentioned some of these costs that or expectations that society has of girls, especially around being domestic help at home. A girl that reads and has been exposed to what's possible would be able to negotiate with their family, with their mother. Even my girls do it here to say, "Oh yes, I'll do my chores, but then I have to study because if I study, I'll be able to do this and that." So all of that helps build girls then um, innate power to stand up for themselves and exercise greater agency. So for us at the Yak Jones Foundation, reading is not about literacy, it's about giving girls the internal strength to not only persevere in the current society we find ourselves, but also to have that inner belief and willpower to persevere in school soon and not drop out.
Thank you so much. Professor Conta Morgan, what are some of the most significant leakages that you see in the pipeline from secondary school to higher education for young women in Sierra Leone?
Hmm. Thank you, Vicky. First off, let me say hello to Bidemi and Yakama. It's been a while, Bidemi. And, so thank you, Vicky, for bringing us all together, and especially having me as part of the team. Just recently, I'll start off with that. I think the Yak Jones Foundation was also awarded at that same ceremony, the Education Awards. And it turned out that, so it's like from best MPSC all through ranks right up to university. And what I, just sitting there watching them all come up, one of the things that struck me was that the top scorers in the primary for the Beque and, I'm sorry, from the MPSC and going to Beque, you had a good, more girls. And then by the time it got to university level, it's it was all male. So it struck me that something is not happening somewhere. And, the leakages, I think Bidemi has mentioned a number of them. Just the fact that, well, the social context in which all and cultural context in which Sierra Leone, what exists here, already puts girls at a disadvantage, whether they are if there's a choice of who gets to go to school, obviously the girls will get the short end of the stick and so on. And the cultural practices. And well, again, there is the issue of teenage pregnancy. This is apocryphal. I don't know. I don't have the statistics for this, but I understand that even though radical inclusion is, is a policy that exists, but not many, a number of girls are not taking advantage of it because there's a stigma attached to having had kids and returning and so on. This is apocryphal, as I say. But again, yes, there are leakages, but from our end at the top, at higher ed level, at my university, what we are seeing is the gender gap closing. In fact, in some areas, you have more female enrollment. The female enrollment is higher.
Okay.
So one of the things why this may be happening could be that the young women are coming later, maybe into university, if there had been issues that may have slowed them down. But we are seeing more of them coming in, and which is quite interesting. But again, I don't know, this has not been documented beyond the numbers, but we haven't really done a deep dive into what could be the reasons. But certainly, I think the age bracket you would see for females, you'll see them not the traditional student college-going age, but you have more women coming in at a later stage in their lives. So there may be leakages in the pipeline, but probably we should be looking at maybe a delayed a delay there in terms of not all is not lost, as it were.
Sure.
And you get I guess a lot of personal stories like that. Young women who have beaten the odds. Parents have died, grandparents taking care of them, and they have done maybe 4 years out of school, and they go back and re-enroll, and then just continue the trajectory. So call me an optimist, maybe, but I do think the leakages are there. And how we beat the odds is what, to me, is a success story. Yakama, you also talked about girls seeing other women and seeing what is possible. And I also believe that. I mean, this generation, better than mine, since Vicky gave my bio, she dated me. So I'll take that. But you would see that I believe that this generation of young women have more role models to look up to. And I think that should help them think of what is possible. I mean, I saw that as just one person being head of IPAM. A month later, we had 3 female candidates come up for the student union government, which was the first time something like that was happening. And in the end, one of them won. And it was like, oh, well, we have a female DVC, so we think we should have a female president. And the following year, we had one who was voted in as vice president, but she went on to be the president of the National Union of Students. So I think the role model thing, the positive role model thing, can also help negate some of these issues that give rise to the leakages we are seeing lower down the pipeline.
No, that's really cool. I actually think I met the NUS president. And I think her name is Fiona. Yeah, I
Leone,
was in
exactly. Yeah.
for this Women's Day event just a couple weeks ago, and she came up to me. She was like, "Hello, Miss Emma. I just want to introduce myself. I'm the first female president of the North." I was like, "Okay, girl." It was really, and she's like, "I want your number."
She's so soft-spoken, you wouldn't think.
So she was like, "I want your number. Let's take a picture." And so, yeah, like she WhatsApped me. No, I think, I definitely think that the Sierra Leonean appetite for women in leadership is changing and it's evolving. I feel like even in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, I think that the visibility also, like media visibility of women's leaders, is really helping that, because even if we had women's leaders before, you didn't always see them, right? And but then, like, thanks to like digital media and, you know, every day now on AYV TV, we have our women politicians. They're on there making palava, and in a way, it's changing. You know, women are raising their voice, so younger women definitely have a lot more points of reference for who they can be, what they can become in society, and that's definitely, I think, a new thing for them to see representation. Bidemi, I know you got to run, so can you talk a little bit about the work that you do at Learning Foundation and how those foundational literacy skills maybe early on serve as a protective factor against girls dropping out later on in their journey?
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. And maybe just to build on some of the points that have been made, I think I think it is true, definitely across the board, that we're seeing huge gains in enrollment of both sort of boys and girls over the last few years. And I think, especially if you look in urban areas, you won't see as much disparity between girls and boys, even in the secondary school area. Where we have the biggest issues is really looking at rural areas and in poor households within rural areas. That's where girls are really lagging behind. And the issue of, role models also come into play. Um, in the majority of our teachers are male. This is true from the primary sector all the way up to senior secondary, and it gets worse, less and less female teachers in the classrooms as you get into the secondary as well. So I think that this issue of role models and teachers as role models and teachers as leaders, mentoring girls is really important. In terms of the Learning Foundation, so like the Act Jones Foundation, the Learning Foundation focuses on improving literacy in primary and secondary school. But also, a big part of our work is that also working with teachers, developing working with teachers to improve their reading instruction skills. You'll find that many of those teachers, as I say, are men. We're trying to get more female teachers in. Um, Female teachers, in Sierra Leone, we also have sort of a large percentage of teachers who are not on the payroll, don't have the necessary certification. Most of those, again, are female teachers, and so they don't tend to stay because people need to find ways to support themselves. But all that being said, I think I said before, it's really important to focus on literacy, and Dr. Yak, was talking about that as well, because it really is the foundation for everything else. If kids don't learn to read, then they continue to struggle and struggle even more as they make their way up the ladder. And it's a reason. So it's protective in the sense that kids who do well in school, their parents, encourage them and keep and they are also encouraged themselves to keep sort of moving forward. So that's why we focus in improving these literacy at the foundational level. We see as well many girls and other students in those transition points that I talked about. We're very exam focused culture. So there's like a big exam to move from primary to junior secondary. There's a big exam to move to senior secondary, and then also to move to the university. Um, and we see that students who are not strong, like when you read the examination reports by the examiners about why students are not passing, one of the main things they say is lack of literacy skills in terms of reading the questions, understanding the questions. So they're continually it just sort of perpetuates as you go up the ladder, and kids repeat a lot, and you find that kids who are if you haven't learned to read, you're going to struggle in these exams, even in the promotional exams. You repeat a class maybe 2 or 3 times, and as Dr. Conte Morgan was saying, especially for girls, if you start late and then you've repeated 3 or 4 times, by the time you're at the end of junior secondary, you're already an adult. You're
Yeah.
already 18, 19. And at that point, the case to sort of go further is really hard for parents to make, because that's a young woman who could be working, who could be contributing in other ways, and then there's the pressure to get married and all of those kinds of things. So I think for all of those reasons, making sure that students have a strong foundation so that um, they can move through the system is really important, and it's especially for girls who are in urban areas and girls from poor backgrounds.
Thank you. And for those of you who are watching and may not be familiar with their work, I know today, Schools for Siloam, we're talking about secondary education, but we work across the educational system. Our partners are, in fact, we built more primary schools, and most of our work and most of the schools that we support are in the primary level. We're now moving to more junior and senior secondary schools because over 20 years of doing this work, we're basically like you, we're looking at this data, right? And it's saying to us that, you know, we're losing children as they go further along the educational system, and barriers to schools are still a key issue, especially in last mile communities. The further that's junior secondary school, senior secondary school, the physical school is to where the child's community is, the higher the likelihood that they're going to drop out. And so in most of the communities where we work, we want to make sure that we're closing that gap, the physical gap of access, while at the same time working to strengthen the ecosystem. So the work that we do with Learning Foundation is that in the schools that we support, the Learning Foundation, Vietnamese organization, comes in and supports. We train teachers on foundational literacy training skills, right? So that when they are in class 1 and class 2, where those children are coming in without having had preschool or kindergarten, don't know their letters, coming there for the first time, that our teachers in our schools know how to teach early literacy, because it's not something that's part of, if you have most of your teachers being volunteer teachers in the first place, they don't even have the formation yet to be able to teach at these levels. So we work across, I just wanted to clear that we work across the educational system. We don't work at the university level, even though so we do provide scholarships for some of our students who've come through our schools to continue to study in university, but we don't work at the university level. So our work is from primary to senior secondary. Yakima, I feel like everybody can think of this and like probably has some idea, but as our economist in the room, what are some of the long-term costs to Sierra Leone's development when only 12.5% of our girls are completing secondary school?
Yes. So if when you think about Sierra Leone and more than half of the population is female, and then you look at only 12.5% of them completing secondary school, it's really worrying. Like you're like, oh wow, we're losing economic potential at scale. And usually when, because I do a lot of work in human capital development, we usually talk about gender inequality and the economic impact of that. And one popular report that always comes to mind is the Power of Parity report by McKinsey and Co., where they said if there's gender parity globally, the global economy could gain to $28 trillion every year. That's not billion, trillion. So I think sometime last year, I was like thinking about this in terms of Sierra Leone. So I just did some rough estimations, not complete economic modeling, just looking at 2024 GDP per capita of about $806.7, and then looking at annual productivity loss per girl of about $327. And then you're looking at the annual school census data, say, for example, a cohort of girls of about 94,000. So if you look at that, say that cohort do not complete, they do not graduate, that is roughly about $30.8 million we're losing by the time that girl reaches working age. So it's economically, it's not a marginal social loss. It's like a recurring economic loss because every year there are girls that do not graduate. So it's like for every cohort of girls that drops out before completing secondary school, that's tens of millions of dollars lost annually. And then if you estimate that over, like, for example, 40-year working life of that girl,
Mhm.
that's like hundreds of millions lost in economic value. And that's huge. 'Cause I'm just looking at the budget of Sierra Leone and how much we spend in education sector. It's that loss is transformative. It's really affecting what is possible, what we could spend on, what investments we could make for the people of Sierra Leone. So economically, beyond looking beyond the numbers, the first is productivity loss. Because like I always say, education is not an end. The goal is to make our future workforce as productive as possible. So if they're dropping out in senior secondary school where we expect them to build those skills that would help them get into productive jobs, high paying jobs, then we're losing productivity early. And there's studies that have shown that for every additional year of learning that a girl completes, it adds about 10 to 20% of in future earnings for them. So this is us saying because they do not complete, we're discounting their future earnings. They're losing out, and lower incomes means lower tax, people able to pay taxes, and that's translating to lower domestic revenue for government. So it's a whole cycle. So these girls not graduating is really creating a cycle of loss for the economy. And the other thing also is that beyond the numbers, it's also leading to pipeline failure because it's the learners that become workers that participate in our labor market. And countries depend on these learners to become future workers, future entrepreneurs, future leaders. So if they're dropping out and exiting the system early, that pipeline of productive workers it's narrowing. And as we see that it's narrowing a lot faster than before, but now that we have policies in place to kind of reverse the trend, I'm making a case for us to intensify efforts in a systemic way to help reverse those trends. And the third piece, in terms of if we don't address it, what it means for our economy is also the compounding intergenerational effect. Because we always say women are nurturers, it's women that invest time and effort in nurturing the kids' education, it's them that take care of in terms of domestic care for the household. So if the women are not graduating, they're exiting the system early, they cannot take care of the kids well. That translates into like children with stunting, less nutrition. We also have that cost translating into teenage pregnancy that will lead to higher costs in addressing maternal mortality. So it keeps piling up. So girls not completing senior secondary school just has a snowballing effect in terms of the economy, lower productivity, lower incomes, lower tax revenues, and higher longer term social costs because they become more vulnerable, and then governments and partners will need to fund these programs to help support their social welfare. So, as an economist, I want to say that countries that close the gender gap in education actually expand their human capital base. which is essential for long-term economic transformation. And those that do not are actually creating, they actually shooting themselves in the leg, because we have all these aspirational goals of achieving middle income status, becoming high income countries. But if we do not close this gap, then we are not strengthening our human capital base for transformative economic growth.
Thank you. I know Bidemi has to run, so before I go back to Professor Conte Morgan, Bidemi, I'm going to give you last word. Yakima just talked about systematic change. If we were to look ahead in the next 5 years, what's one systematic change that you think would have the greatest impact on ensuring that girls must graduate? Sorry, you're muted. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I think I started in the beginning by saying that there's no magic bullet. And I think I will come back to that. I don't think that there is one thing. I do think that we really, I'm a policy and a researcher. I think we really need to sort of pay attention to, for our particular context, what the major factors are, and then sort of work to address them. In Sierra Leone, it's a combination of, and it's bigger than education. It's a combination of the cost of schooling, which also is then, tied to a poverty level. And so making education affordable in a real sense, I think is important. I think it's also important that, deep down, I'm an education person. I think it's important going on in classrooms and making sure that if we have limited resources, that we really focus those resources on the things that actually improves learning. And that means investing in our teachers, investing um, teaching and learning materials before we look at some of the other things. So yeah, so with that, but yeah, it's a multifaceted problem that calls for a multifaceted solution with the education sector, but beyond even the education sector.
Sure. No, I got you. I was trying to put you in a corner. You're like, no, ma'am, can't do it. Won't do it. He's like, I'll give you the answer, just the answer. Prof, how can we better mentor girls at the secondary level so that they can really view university education, not necessarily something that's not beyond reach, and then the same, I guess, for their parents, right? Because I think in addition to the girls, like parents need to see this as something that's within reach.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I see in schools, I think either Yakama or Bidemi had mentioned that where we don't have many more as many female teachers as we used to have, for example, in all girls schools. And to me, that is one area that I find. I'm a member of a school board, an all girls school that shall remain unnamed. But you know what you see, the kind of, I don't want Bidemi jumping in. What we are seeing is that, I was appalled, first of all, by the numbers. I mean, I've been away for 20 some years and I came back and it's like, so where are the women? Because, Bidemi, you know that in our generation, I mean, especially I went to a convent school, so there weren't even that many. Maybe the lab assistant, all the science and math teachers were mostly men, and that was just a handful. So what we were seeing, the kinds of interactions that we were seeing going to the school break time, and to me, I was shocked. So, but what struck me was that schools may not be doing a lot of safeguarding, maybe, because they're. I mean, I want to be blunt here. I mean, there are sexual predators, masquerading as teachers or the other way around. But that is a real problem. So I think maybe schools need to take a firmer approach or a sterner approach in terms of, and also getting into talking about these issues. And that's where, again, I think that mentors, especially alumni, come in, because I think what we are seeing is across the board in Sierra Leone is alumni associations taking the lead in areas where they feel that, probably what state or the government is providing is not enough. And so working on quality issues, working on building facilities that would enhance learning, and also going in, there are, I mean, all kinds of mentorship programs, whether it is professional in terms of guiding girls towards a certain profession and things like that. So I don't know, with the shorter days when schools are, the two-shift system, I think has kicked out opportunities for a lot of these mentoring and the strengthening of that we think we want our students to have. I don't know, I know you said mentoring. It's difficult with the numbers to kind of pair girls now, or to pair students, say one-to-one and things like that. But I believe this is where, the alumni can take the role of the big social group that can help young people before they get to college level. I don't know, the radical inclusion has really been good. We have seen when government steps in, what happens. And I know that some of the proprietors of schools, the missions in particular, have been pushing for more safeguarding policies being enacted. So maybe we will begin to see some changes. And the mentoring is not just academic. A lot of these young women, I speak to women about women because those are the most, those are whom I interact with most. You play the role of agony aunt, you play the role of a mother, you play the role of a physician, because a lot of these young ladies don't have the answers to what's happening to their bodies, how they should act in a social situation and things like that. And yeah, you know that, Vicky. My hanging out with the DVC was a great opportunity and I can tell you, it's not just the college age students. I had female students who are in a relationship, who are married, who are, who are living with a partner, and you get all kinds of questions, looking for advice and things like that. So mentorship goes beyond the academic. And again, I don't know, there used to be in secondary schools, I think, what was it, FLE, Family and Life, something, which was on the curriculum. And but all of those have been kind of kicked off because the days became shorter, where you have an 8 to 12 morning shift and you have to turn over quickly to get the afternoon shift come in. So maybe what we're looking at is a situation, or looking forward to, would be a situation where, as a community, we look inward. In these big towns and cities, maybe, not so much that, but in the rural areas, the more remote areas where there are not many of these kinds of groups who can help to shape the minds and lives of young people, then I think the community there need to be more dialogue between the community and the schools to ensure that these are not kept separate. Because I think there's that what happens in school stays in school, what happens at home stays at home, and so on. So I think there need to be somewhere in the middle where we can have a common meeting point, and we keep hoping for the best. But I'm an optimist, so I believe that we can do more.
No, absolutely. I mean,
better.
you're speaking to about just there's this. I don't want to say there's an information gap, but for women at least, there's like a reproductive health information gap, right? Somewhere in their upbringing, in education, even their mothers don't have this information. Their aunties don't have this information. What's happening to my body? So you can't even go to like your closest family relation to get the right information, right? Because they're also passing down to you some old wives' tale that they might know that may not necessarily be accurate. And then there's also just the like stigma and taboos of like, if you're asking about your body, then it's a sign that you're sexually active and that's a problem, right? So girls would generally, and adolescents just don't talk about this. One of our partners, one of our key partners in Sierra Leone is Woman Talk. And in addition to manufacturing reusable pads and kits, they also are reproductive health education trainers. So in all of the Schools for Salon schools that we support, Woman Talk also goes in sometimes twice a year to do these reproductive health education classes, and also give out the free sanitary pads, which can last each girl for up to a year. Though most recently we had to expand that program because we found that if a girl lives in a household that has limited means, if you give her a kit that has 3 pads, one go to an aunties, one go to a sister, one go to a mama. So then that kit no longer like serves the purpose. So now when we go into communities, we make sure that it's not just the girl. We don't leave their aunties and their moms behind. So we give the kits to the girls in our schools. And then now we also host the reproductive health education. Woman Talk does, supported by us. We invite the women to come in and the dads. We also host the reproductive health education classes for boys as well. And then there was complaint from the boys that the girls are getting pads, they're not getting anything. Oh, this equality. So then we had to create kits for the boys that have like boxers and soap, so that they also they also would have something without leaving empty-handed. So we've definitely realized in most of the schools where we work, where these reproductive health education classes are happening, where Woman Talk is giving out these pads, we go down to 0 cases of teenage pregnancy, right? Girls are actually, we're reducing also missed days of schools. Girls are not needing to miss those like 4 or 5 days every month because they're because of period poverty. So to your point, yes, we totally recognize that it really takes a community. It really takes a community. And the only way to kind of push back against some of these like sociocultural gender issues is by taking on each problem as part of the larger work that we do. Initially, we, as Schools for Salon, went into Sierra Leone 2 decades ago. We thought the problem was just to build schools in the post-war context, right? Okay, we just have to build the schools. And then we started building schools and we found that, building a school building in itself does not equate to learning. Okay, now we need to make sure that the teachers are trained. So that's where Learning Foundation comes in. So the teachers are being trained, and we're like, oh, wait, if the teachers are just trained, they're not certified, then they can't get on the government payroll. So we then also now support teachers to gain the 3-year certification so that they can at least be certified to get on the payroll to get their PIN. And then we're like, during Ebola, as everybody knows, there was that high rate of teenage pregnancy that happened because so many girls were at home, right? And, through the research that we did, we found, just like everybody else, like the data came out and said that, oh my God, look at all these girls who've now had to drop out of school because they were, they became pregnant during the Ebola era. And that data is what led us to basically found Woman Talk as a direct response to this, let's empower girls so that they have the information they need to protect themselves and to understand what's happening with their bodies. So along the way that we work in Sierra Leone over the last decade has really been defined by a response to the needs of the communities that we work. And now the most pressing thing that we're seeing in our work is this gender gap at the secondary school level, which is why it was so critical to have this conversation today. Um, so Schools with Alone is based in Seattle, but we work in Sierra Leone through our various partners. So there's a Sierra Leone Book Trust where we work primarily for our libraries program. We also work with the Learning Foundation. You met Bidemi. There's also Uman Talk, and then there's also Last Mile Learning. And historically, we also worked with Program for Children to build, most of our early schools in Sierra Leone. Um, Before we close out this conversation, I have to ask the same question that I asked Bidemi to you, Yakama. If we were to look ahead 5 years, and I'm sure you're going to also give me like the economist perspective of like the multiple indicators. But if we were to look ahead 5 years, what's one systematic change that you think would have the greatest impact in ensuring that girls must graduate?
Well, now I'm going to surprise you. I'm not going to give you the economists.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
You fell for it.
I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you the systems thinker and practitioner perspective.
Yes, ma. Yes,
And
ma.
Dinami already alluded to that. Because for me, I think the goal should be every girl that enters secondary school should be tracked, supported, and encouraged to graduate. And as Bidemi said, it goes beyond the education system. It's how we ensure that our education policies, our health systems, our social protection systems, our gender policies, and community leadership, like the work you do in engaging not just the girls, but like the communities, men and women, aunties, all of that, how they all work together seamlessly. That's how we'll be able to ensure that we have more girls graduating. So it's like our policies should address the or support these girls at every point in their learning cycle, from entry to retention to completions. And if we are talking about doing this effectively, that small economics thing is coming in. We have to track them. Yes. So it's like just being intentional, because if we're being intentional, we're tracking how we're implementing these policies, these reforms in our learning systems, and how all these different sectors work together. We'll be able to identify the at-risk girls early, and then use that to intervene or connect them to the relevant support services. So if you notice that the problem with this girl is like the financial constraints, this add-on cost of schooling, then you'll be able to connect that girl to financial services, to scholarships, to stipends, or to these conditional cash transfers. If you see it's around issues around maybe low income in the household, so this girl's coming to school hungry, definitely this girl should be someone that should be benefiting from like a school feeding program. And you also having connecting them to making sure that the school is a safe learning environment. You have sanitation facilities, wash facilities. These girls have menstrual hygiene support, protection from gender-based violence, and of course the community engagement thing that is needed to help change minds and behaviors against all these gendered social norms that negatively affect girls, and engaging paramount chiefs, women leaders, just getting them to see that girls' education are not is not a burden. These girls should be seen as like future drivers of economic progress. And yes, then government and partners should hold these institutions responsible not just for enrollment, also for making sure that for retention and completion. So this is where we bring in performance-based grants or subsidies to our learning institutions. So I think it's a whole systems approach that's needed, because we need to move away from just counting girls enrolling to actually tracking them and holding ourselves accountable to ensuring that they graduate. And if we implements this approach, every girl becomes visible. So they become seen, they become supported, and then dropout will become more preventable. So like this is the shift that we need. We just stop asking whether are the girls staying in school, and start asking whether our systems are strong enough to support them to not only stay in school and to graduate. And the key thing here is also graduating, because if they graduate, it's not just a personal success, but it's a national investment that will yield returns year in, year out. Yes. So
Thank
that's
you.
very
You really,
quick.
I said, you said you're giving me six systems thinker. Okay, systems thinker. Thank you so much. Prof, I want to ask the same question of you. If we were to look ahead 5 years, what's one systematic change you believe would have the greatest impact on ensuring that girls graduate?
So what if I said, Yakama has said them all? But what no, honestly, you must have noticed I was nodding. I thought I was going to, my head would drop off, because these are we're all thinking, having the same thoughts and so on. But one of the things we are looking at, clearly there have to be interventions coming from the school, coming from government policies, coming from the community, and so on. And I think we've spoken quite a bit about the school and the community. But one of the things I was thinking, Yakama, help me here, because I'm not sure if using the national ID number is, I think, is going to be tied to, because that was my understanding, that there'll be a phasing in where every school-going child would have that ID number. Because at university, we're beginning to think about that, say that's the number you use throughout. So if that were the case, then, some kind of tracking in terms of, so when girls enroll, and try to see, in other words, try to catch the vulnerable spots where we think, hey, the number may have dipped. Let's find out what it is and try to catch it before we get to the end of secondary school to find out that only, so many have dropped out, when interventions might be late. So, a bit like, I don't know, you have an education profile, but that also requires a robust management information system to be able to track and train teachers to be able to find where these where the link might be getting broken or something. And I'm not sure too whether we still have guidance counselors in schools. Sure. I think those have, again, not been too, I don't know. I don't know if they are still found in schools. Sure. And just so you know, Yakama, I'm part of a team working with the ministry, basic MBSSE. Next Monday, Tuesday, there's going to be a 2-day conference, but this is more on the English language crisis, and yeah, I know and I know. Even the numbers failing. In fact, I asked the question the other day, which was quite, I couldn't get the answer. So, is that disaggregated by gender? Who passes, who fails, and so on? Because again, somebody, maybe you or Bidemi had alluded to that. When students don't recognize that the writing classes they're taking, freshman course, is actually linked to the types of essays they're writing in answering their subject in their subject areas, you'll be surprised that they do not see the link. That is English. This is economics. So if I asked the difference between a central bank, the operations of a central bank, and high street bank, for example, they would not relate that to their compare contrast papers that they were writing in their freshman, in their writing courses. So that, yeah, which, yeah, sounds amazing, but no, they do not make that connection. So what we are seeing then is we need to, maybe the school system itself is kind of fragmented in that sense that students aren't seeing a linear growth or trying to see that all of this will come together for them to make them, well, not just book smart, but also, a total social growth as well. So, in a word or two, I think bring back the guidance counselors, or if they are there, let us strengthen what they need to do, because they are supposed to be the early warning system, but that's not there. And and also if we can track where we think there's a dip in the numbers and try to mend that weak link there before it goes up the chain, then that might help.
No, I think
2
that's
words.
I love it. So two things. First, yeah, I the fact that there's even a conference about the English language crisis, the fact that that's even like a thing right now, clearly suggests that we're in the right direction, because it has been my experience over the years, because I interact on social media, especially, I would say like one of the most jarring things that I've experienced online has been the anti-English, anti-English digital violence, I would say, right? Where because like people see English is a barrier in Sierra Leone. It's a barrier. It means exclusion. But coming into it initially, I didn't realize that, right? So I would face all this like almost like anti English backlash where people just be like, why are you speaking in English? You're always speaking in English. And I was just like, wait, we're Sierra Leoneans. What do you mean? Why am I speaking in English? But it took some like reflection to understand that what they were really saying was, when you speak in English, you're excluding me from I can't participate in the conversation. So if this is a Sierra Leonean thing, it has to be in Creole so that I can access it, right? But I didn't realize that that was a thing until, yeah, people were just like, no, why are you speaking in English? They can't access because English language is a barrier. So I'm really glad that this, first of all, that conversation is happening, and hopefully there can be some like some ESOL programming rolled out across the board, not just in education, because there are people now who are adults who are working who still struggle with English, and there's just no way for them to kind of catch up. So that's exciting. So I'm slowly becoming optimistic like you, Professor Conta Morgan, slowly. And then also, I think one of the most, probably the most insightful things that you said was this thing of like, how do we track, how can we track a student who enters class 1 throughout the entire life cycle, right? So that when that child is moving through the system, that child can be seen, right? Like someone is making sure the child is progressing. And when the child stops moving forward, there is an alarm, right? Or there's some kind of like notice that's flagged that like, students something in this place, we saw them this year, we've not seen them at the start of this semester, or they started this semester and we haven't seen them this year. And then also things like, okay, what are the warning signs before a child is about to drop out of schools? Because I'm sure that they probably start missing school, they probably aren't doing well in school, maybe they come from a not just a single parent background, but maybe they don't have their parents, but they have guardians. So all of these different things, like, so if the school is tracking, and maybe this is something guidance counselors can do, or principals, but if there's a way to track what's happening in the life of students, and if you know the warning signs, right, of a student that's about to drop out. And you can then create interventions to make sure that, okay, we didn't see this student in school. It's been 3 days. That means that like something else is going on in their life. Can we send out support? Does the teacher, the principal needs to go walk to their house or something? Can people get called? Who's the point of contact? Questions should be asked. I think that that's like really fantastic, right? That's like a really proactive way for us to say like we truly don't want any child to be left behind, and so that we're going to track them along the way. Thank you so much. I want to open the floor to questions really, really quickly before we wrap up. One question that I saw earlier that Bidemi did try to answer was a question about how do we define, and which I think is a key one, how do we define like high school completion or secondary school completion in Sierra Leone? So if somebody does, is it that they have to pass WASC? Or is it like if you finish secondary school, let's say you get all the way to Form 5, but you don't pass WASC, have you still completed secondary school? What's Professor Contemorgan, do you know? How do we define secondary school completion in Sierra Leone?
Good question, because I think they're now kind of changing views.
Okay.
Or at least they're beginning. We're beginning to see things like that. Because as you said, I mean, to actually show that, yeah, I got to the end of secondary school, you're expected to have some kind of requirements for either university or TVET training or what have you. So in other words, it's not just reaching that level, but also what do you have to show for it? And that comes in the number of passes and things like that. Because again, as they say, the age determines the stage. So if you have done, you're 18, 19, you've completed high school, you've come to the end of secondary school, then the expectation is you're going into some tertiary level.
Sure.
Tertiary institution. So I think that's how we have typically defined a successful school completion rate, that you have the credentials to take you onto higher ed or various tertiary institutions. But I say that is changing now because the government is putting a lot more emphasis on tech voc education. So in the sense that even if you do not make the cut for university entrance, but you can go into a skills development, a skills training thing. So I think that is beginning to catch on really slowly because there's a concerted effort. It's intentional to push to push TVET education. But before now, so you were considered a dropout if you couldn't make it to university, and it's like, what next? So you either go look for a job and, or, you go into some kind of entrepreneurial enterprise and see what works, what would work. Yeah. Sure. But I think what we are seeing is that change. And I think the government the ministries are doing a great job in pushing that as options. So people would not getting your 5 credits, including English and math, as a failure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yakima, we have a quick question here from Ryan Lake, and it's like, what do you think? I mean, I feel like since you're in this space, you're in this foundational learning space, what do you think is the reason for such low English language scores on the WASC? And does it get worse over time, or do you find that like it's there in the primary level and it just continues?
Well, for me, I think it's all the reason is a weak foundation. So they've been challenged in literacy since early learning. So it's just multiplies, it just compounds up to the WASC level and up to university. Because how should I say it? Even as a lecturer and just supervising dissertations and thesis, you see, even just lecturing mathematics. So like there was a year I taught math for social sciences. So it's like first year mathematics for all those that are in the social sciences. And I was teaching a topic on simple interest, and I was trying to explain interest. Like interest is when you take stuff on, and the additional amount you need to pay when you take money on credit. That phrase on credit, we spent like 10 minutes trying to explain what it means. I needed to go back to Korea and say, wait to us, the
Wow.
money that like
Sure,
that.
sure.
See. And I was like, and these are people that got like A's in math at WASC level. So for English, I think it's just a weak foundation that continues to compound. And it's not just on the learning side, it's also on the teaching side. So
Sure.
I know we have a culture of where teachers teach students to memorize, and English language is not examined in that way. It's not a memory recall kind of subject. It's like you knowing structure, you knowing how to show evidence of you being able to comprehend. It has elements of critical thinking. So it's not just the learning side, it's also how it's been taught. Cause and so it calls for a really broader reforms to help get our learners passing sixth form English. And like Prof said, there's the workshop next week. So we're going to see real tough conversations and see what can be done,
Yeah.
some things, tangibles that will help
Yeah.
us change this trajectory.
If I
And
could, yeah.
methodological reforms and
If,
stuff like that. And I guess it will be tough because there might be people that might not want to own up that we're not teaching English in the right way. And even there's also this
Mhm.
piece around English not being in many homes people don't speak English. It's
That part.
Creole. Even in on campuses, you hear students talking Creole, people
Yeah.
talking Creole in their school uniforms, students calling you up and trying to speak to you in Creole. Like, you know, I'm your lecturer. Why are you talking to me in Creole? Like, so there are all these other social things and informalities around practicing English. So yes, they all compound and
Mm,
contribute to the challenges
yeah.
with the
Yeah. And
result.
I think the loss of reading, I mean, there is just not,
It's not
I mean,
culture.
students just don't, yeah, they don't like to read. When I was heading the library, one of the things I would do was even if it's not reading, these word searches, the books you buy at the dollar stores in the US, for example. So we'll print out pages and just put them on the tables. So when students come in, rather than sleep in the library, maybe you can find a few words. And yeah. So just, probably activities that should get, we also have a leisure reading collection, hoping that this could stimulate reading. You don't have to finish a book. Maybe just read a chapter a day, 5 pages a day. So, and that also, I don't think there's a lot of curiosity about wanting to learn more. You was talking, speaking Creole. You have teachers in schools speaking Creole to the students, so or whatever the language could be, the regional language. So it starts from all of that, and therefore students don't. I've had students, come in to discuss something, and they'll ask you, "Can I say it in Creole, ma?" I said, "No." So you write your papers in English. So let's try.
I mean, interestingly, I mean, it's so funny. It's so funny because so living in the diaspora, sometimes you meet Sierra Leoneans, even in the diaspora, and you speak English to them. And I've been met with Boyuna Salon Posting, talk to me pan Creole as a response to me speaking English. And I'm just like, yeah, me na Salon Posting, I can talk to you Creole, but me also not Creole. So for that talk to you pan English, that's also part of that's also the part of my culture, English. So I definitely think that there's this thing that's happened. I don't know I always hesitate to go back to the Civil War and its impact on lots of kind of like social and community building, people and human building activities. Something as simple as when you're in school, going to the library used to be a normal part of primary school education. And I remember returning to Sierra Leone in 2003, and I was a volunteer teacher at the Forum for African Women Educationalists on 4th Street. And I was teaching two classes, class 1, class 6. And I remember this was 2003, 2004. And I taught there from 2003 to 2007. And asking students every single year, have you been to the Sierra Leone Library Board, which was a walking distance from 4th Street to the library. And it was like I was speaking a foreign language. What is the library?
Sadly.
At class 4 and class 6. And so then I would organize field trips to go to the library. When I was in primary school, going to the British Council to watch films on Saturdays, going to the library board, and the AC used to be so cold, and having access. Books were not a luxury. It wasn't like a distant thing. It was part of our lives. Now children their parents don't read, and they don't have access to books, and there's just like this breakdown. And in that educational breakdown, there's the language skills, there's the English, there's the teachers not knowing English themselves, and then not having the teaching skills to teach English, and so many different things all kind of coming together that I think has caused this breakdown in language. But I see another question from Louise, who's asking, from your experience, how do you think the high stakes exams like the NPSC shape learning opportunities that might marginalize children in rural communities? Do you see these impacting girls and boys in different ways? Yakima, I'm going to let you take that. But just in a second, I feel like at the secondary school level, I've been really impressed and inspired to see, especially at our schools, the Schools for Salone, like at the NPSC level, the kids are like hitting it. Like it's something has happened at the primary level. I see Allison shaking her head, so I'm going to bring her in really quickly, even though she wasn't prepared to talk. But Allison, could you speak on that really quickly? At NPSC, I think it used to be high stakes, but I don't think it is anymore. Do you get a sense what's happening at the Schools for Salone schools? And then I'll let Yakima talk, because she does her foundation does specialized NPSC prep at primary schools to get them game day ready.
Yeah. Well, and I was shaking my head because a couple of days ago I've been, compiling our academic year data. And so what we have found we have an average of an 84% pass rate amongst all of our schools that we support. So, that's really encouraging. I mean, I know that there's challenges among the, with the NPSC itself, but as a preliminary, data point, I mean, that's pretty good. And some of our schools have been ranking really high within the chieftaincies and the districts that they're in. So,
and that's even in the rural communities, correct?
And these are rural schools. Yeah. So, and, some of them could be from interventions from Learning Foundation. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that we haven't done a super deep dive into, but just on a preliminary level, we're really encouraged by that. So,
yeah. I also find that parents now are so invested in NPSC. Like every time I'm in Freetown on exam day, I live near Vine Memorial School, which is like an exam center. The parents are outside, like, I compare it to like when it's like a football match in the US and like, some competitive thing, like parents are outside with lunch and food and they're just camped out of the schools. And, lots of moms like really early in the morning. And it's like they're really invested in those NPSC exams and just making sure that their kids are successful. Yakima, what could you speak a little bit about NPSC? Is it still high stakes? How do you find that it's impacting kids in boys and girls?
So NPSC is really, really high stakes.
Okay.
I think it's even high stakes for the parents compared to the kids. We're also stressed. Like it's the first major transitional exams for our kids, and we all want to see them and progress. From my experience over the years, we kind of have parity in primary school completion, and even from the results, girls are performing better than the boys at the primary school level and NPSC level more recently. But the rural urban divide is still very visible, and I think it's just a manifestation of the quality of learning institutions, of teachers, and also the support systems that these kids are exposed to. So they still do those differences still come through in the results. So you see there sometimes schools with zero passes, and most of the time those schools are outside Freetown, and even those that are in the western area would be in western rural. So the rural urban divide still comes through. But in terms of the gender performance, girls are performing better than boys, and yes, so that's, but it's still really high stakes because it's the first major public transitional exams for our learners.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's a good thing, but the fact that girls outperform boys every year on the NPSC is something that needs to be studied because I I mean, I don't know what's going on. It's a good, I mean, is it a good thing? I want to say it's a good thing. It's like, but I don't know what's happening in communities at the family levels that I know that in the US there's data that suggests yes that I think I've seen in the past about girls being ahead of boys at some point when they're younger in the education in as they're learning, and then as they get older girls start speaking less and then they stop participating. So I know that that kind of background exists, but I don't know why in Sierra Leone now MPSC like almost every year like the top, it's almost like every year like the top performer is also a girl. And I mean, what's happening?
I think the girls are more inspired, and then even beyond the formal academics of it, there's some gendered differences that I noticed. Like you, from our NPSC prep classes, boys are often more in a hurry to complete their responses. So, and for MPSC, it's options A, B,
Right.
C, D. So they don't read all the options as soon as they get to A or B, and they think that's the answer. They shading. Girls often do take the time to go through the list and then make a decision. Sometimes you even for questions where they don't really know the answer because it becomes the guessing game. So they kind of approach it with this elimination style, and the boys sometimes just say, "Oh, I just." They're just these small things that I notice. I don't know whether it's
You know,
nationwide,
I have
but
a
they're
son.
these
As soon
small
as you
things.
started saying it, I was like, oh, that sounds like Olu. Mister never finished reading the question and just answer. That's my house.
Yes. So during our MPSC prep classes, we always need to like talk to them. Like you need to read every available option before you make a final, select your final answer and shade and stuff like that. Oh, they don't like reading over their responses. Like I'm done, I'm done.
He has
If
to go
even there's
play.
time
He has
left.
to go
So I
play.
don't know whether it's like the genetics at that level or at that age bracket also contributes. But yes, there are things that we need to look into to really get a deeper understanding of how the girls are outperforming the boys.
Okay, I have one last question here. Sorry, someone just called me and it just took my screen away. Where is my screen? Oh, there you are. Christiana was asking, do you think children who start and complete early childhood education have a greater chance and better access to complete secondary school? And either Professor Conte Morgan or Yakima can take this one.
And let's Prof go first.
Okay.
Yeah. I, again, I wouldn't I don't have data to show to back this up. But I think with the government policy now stressing early childhood education and building centers around the country, so I think there must be something to support that. At least if you give them a head start, a good head start, and that would help in terms of I'm not sure about the completion, but certainly of doing better. Yeah.
Learning outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah, the outcomes might be
Like that's a
better.
learning outcome thing. Yeah.
And maybe, who knows, if a child is doing better, that could motivate parents to keep getting this, the child to stay in school. I don't. So there may be other knock-on effects. I don't know, but clearly, as you know, there's a government push to develop early childhood education in the country, and it's early days yet because this is a new intervention, so we would need to see how that plays out.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really thought we were going to be, I was like, oh, this is going to take 1 hour.
Well, my battery died.
I'm sorry. But this is what happens when you get like educationalists into a room. Like everybody's so passionate about the work in the best of ways that the conversation can really keep going. So thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time, and for everybody who's joined this conversation. Before we go, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the work that we do and why we continue to have these conversations. And that's just that, we know the challenges, clearly. We've been doing this work for over 2 decades, and we know the challenges. We also know the solutions, right? We understand what works because we're in these communities, we're in these schools, we're working with teachers, we're working with principals, we understand what's needed. And that's why we work through these partners to, we don't nitpick and just say, okay, let's go build schools. We know that like schools in themselves are just buildings. If we can improve learning outcomes, it's just a building. That the ultimate goal is making sure that we're not leaving students behind. Right now, and I think I have to, it's like I have to like drive this thing where it's like you gotta, okay, I have to drive the, there you go. So the reason why we are here today is to talk about the stark reality of secondary school completion rates in Sierra Leone. 20% of boys complete secondary school compared to just 12% of girls. And this is a problem. As you heard from our experts today, whether a girl graduates from secondary school or not has larger implications, not just for her life, but also for the society at large. We heard Dr. Yakima talk about the economic costs, the loss to Sierra Leone's economy when women can't participate fully, right? So we're facing a crisis. If only 12.5% of girls actually complete secondary schools. This isn't just about a lack of books, it's about a lack of basic human dignity and support. In addition to not being able to complete secondary schools, girls can also miss up to 20% of their school days simply because they lack menstrual hygiene, resources, and face social issues and pressures to either drop out of school, to get married, or to become economic providers for their families. And then even when there are classrooms, 65% of the educators in most of the schools in Sierra Leone haven't gotten the fundamental training needed to effectively teach them how to read. And sorry, I have to drive again. And at Schools for Salone, we believe that these numbers are unacceptable, but we also know that they're changeable. Your support today and always, a lot of people who are on this call are people who support our work year on and year out. When Women Talk is producing reusable menstrual kits, that work is being done thanks to donors like you. Every reproductive health education session that we host in schools and in communities communities is done because of donors in our community. The schools that we build, the teachers that we train, the scholarships that we provide. Every year for the last 20 years, the work that we've done in Sierra Leone, building over 47, 48 schools, is done thanks to the individual donations and support of our community. This month, we have an ongoing fundraiser, which I think will close. Yeah, we close next week. When what we're trying to do is to continue to raise funds to expand our programs in Sierra Leone and strengthen our work to support the education ecosystem that produces young women and men like Mary Jallo, who you saw at the top of this webinar, who can come back into the communities that they're from to add value and support others, whether with education or in other things. If you would like to support our work, there is a QR code at the top of the screen. I think it's, no, there's a QR code over here. Oh man, this is terrible. You see the QR code. You can click on that QR code and it'll take you to our website, or you can head up over to Schools for Salone. Sorry. I should have typed it out. There you go. It's there. Schoolsforsalone.org. To find out more about our work, you can also sign up for our newsletter so that you will continue to, hear our program updates. We actually have a program update going out in a couple of days. So make sure you head to our website, schoolsforsalone.org, to sign up for our newsletter. You can also go to our website to donate and support our work. Please consider making a gift to help turn these statistics that we've all heard here today around. Together, we can ensure that every child in Sierra Leone has the opportunity to not just go to school, but to also finish their education. And for those of you who weren't able to register for the webinar, and maybe you're watching this on social media, if you're interested in this work and in supporting Schools for Salone, feel free to inbox me. Schools for Salone is also on LinkedIn, is on Facebook, and on Instagram, as well as on our website. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all your questions, which were really fantastic. I want to thank our speakers today, Professor Content Morgan, Dr. Yakima Jones, and Dr. Bidemi Carroll, for sharing their wealth of experience and expertise with us. I'd like to thank everyone at Schools for Salone, Allison and Joanna and Cindy, and of course, my amazing teams in Ghana and in Sierra Leone, without whom none of this is ever possible. I feel like every time people only see my face, it makes it feel like, I do all this by myself, but I really don't. We have an amazing team that supports this work and makes all of it possible, including the production of the short documentary video that you saw in the start. So thank you so much for joining us, and see you online soon.